I got headphones if you want it, babe. Got headphones with you, Rocket Man's Wheelhouse, episode 4. My guest today is Greta Van Fleet, sorta. So I am here and super excited, man. Super excited. All by myself. I just had to get this out. So Greta Van Fleet, their new record, The Battle at Garden's Gate, comes out the 16th. I don't know what day that is. I'm not going to look it up. It's next week. I think it's Friday. I don't know. It's probably not Friday. Who knows? I am super excited about this record. I have been since the Age of the Machine single dropped. That song is insane. I don't care if you label these guys hipster bands, Zeppelin ripoffs, whatever you want to call these dudes. Call them what you want, man. I don't care. To be honest with you, man, I really didn't used to like them. I didn't. I'm a huge music fan. I don't feel like I should have to give you credentials on why you should listen to me about music, but I'm going to give them to you anyway. So all these Greta Van Fleet records behind me. Wow, how to get those? I don't know. So my wife runs an online record store. We're avid record collectors, have been forever, and I have searched for music high and low since, I always say 14. I think it was before that, man. I remember having tapes. I remember having... Just my mom would show me these Chris Ray or however you say his name, these singles and Fleetwood Mac, and you know I remember my parents getting excited about music and excited about hearing music, and music has always been a part of my life, and I have never stopped searching. I reached out to a childhood buddy of mine recently, and I said, dude, I am still the same 14-year-old kid that you knew that would cut grass, do whatever, and spend every dime on trying to find the next piece of music that was killer. Just absolutely going to be killer. And I'm telling you guys, stick around and listen to me on this Greta Van Fleet, because I'm going to lay it out. I'm trying to lay it out Matt Taibbi style. I'm super obsessed with him lately. Been reading a ton of articles. And what I mean by that, before everyone tunes out because everyone's attention span's about 20 seconds long, this is what I want to do. So I have this record that's coming in. I'm excited about it. I think there's going to be a lot of people out there that are excited about this record and are going to want to know a little bit of information. But here's the deal. I just read this article where Matt Taibbi was at Michael Jackson's trial. And if you have not read that, I'm going to say this wrong, man, because my head's all in. I got everything up here. I got me some notes this time. But so he's at Michael Jackson's trial, and he's telling you kind of everything else that's going on. There's more to the story. You know, Michael Jackson went to trial for whatever he did, but you know, there's people out there protesting, and he really just paints this picture of what's going on. And that's what I hope to do with my personal experience with Greta Van Fleet's new record. So I think anyone looking back on this record coming out, or anyone that is alive, breathing, and has ears now knows that the virus that took over the world, it seems like, may have robbed us of quite a bit of music. And so I think there's a lot of people that are super thirsty for music right now. I can think of a few bands that have dropped records. Neil Young has been busy out of his mind repping Neil Young on my shirt today. And I have his box set laying here next to me that I'm going to pull up and show you just in a second. But Neil's been releasing a lot of stuff. Kings of Leon dropped an album that felt really mature, felt great. And, you know, I'm not reviewing that record. That record's okay in comparison to Greta Van Fleet's new record, if you're asking me. So I'm starting to, you know, I wasn't a fan of Greta Van Fleet. Let me get back to that. So I'm painting the picture of everything that's going on with me and experiencing this record. I'm going to get into all that. But Greta Van Fleet themselves, they've, you know, I remember starting to hear about them, I don't know, a couple years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. I don't know when they were first starting to come out. I know they came to Nashville and they played a show at Marathon Music Works. It sold out instantly. And, you know, I don't know how to explain this. Any guy who's 30-ish or older or whatever, like, you see these young guys coming on, and I think we really want to see bands emerge again. You know, we want to see a mighty, you know, BTO or Neil Young or Deep Purple. Like, we're dying as music fans to hear bands get back to just these genuine ideas, versus in America, which is what I think's been going on basically since the Beatles, is chasing the mighty dollar of the next big record. I just did a huge listen through of ZZ Top. I got both of their box sets, I forget what they're called now, man. I can't remember anything again. But so I'm listening through all of their records, and I highly recommend the Netflix documentary that they have out that came out, I think, a year or two ago. Fantastic. Those guys are fantastic. And, I think as a millennial coming into the world, basically your introduction to classic rock is classic rock radio. And I'm a big proponent of that being a huge shame. There's so much music out there that people don't hear, that they don't play on the radio, and it should be out there. There's a ton of material from that genuine era of classic rock where record companies weren't telling them exactly what order they wanted the songs and telling them exactly what they wanted the guitar to sound like or not to sound like, or a manager's making decisions about overdubbing or not. I mean, what we really look for as super music fans, which I'm advocating that I am, people tell me all the time on a couple of my other podcasts, they would tell me, hey man, you're an expert on music. I don't know what that means because I only know what I know about music. Maybe I am an expert if an expert means that listening to thousands of albums in languages that I don't know, in genres that I don't necessarily care about, I really feel like I'm truly digging into bands that maybe at first glance it's like I wouldn't like that. Big example would be Tenarwin. I used to work at Whole Foods and I had a guy that used to tell me about Tenarwin all the time. And he's like, Craig, you need to check out Tenarwin. You need to check out Tenarwin. And I listened to it and it's just, it's not me, man. I don't dig it. And then I don't know if my mind matured or my taste matured, but I tried again. I tried the music again. And after I dug into Tenarwin the second time, I feel like I have almost like a spiritual experience listening to Tenarwin. It's completely different than Western music. There's a lot of in between tones, and I'm no expert on the actual theory of music or notes or any of that. I'm definitely going to try to bring people on that are, but I do feel like I know what sounds good and what gives me chill bumps, and what is absolute talent versus bands who are just trying to fit a mold and sell a product. That leads me to Greta Van Fleet. So at first glance, Greta Van Fleet is a band that I feel like I should not like. And that may be hard to hear. Hopefully maybe they check my deal out here. But bands grow. Bands grow quite a bit. And I'll give you a really good example of that. I have here with me. I'm going to show off a couple of my records. Hopefully this is in the shot. This is one of my favorite autograph records that I have. It's Betty's Blends Volume 2, Chris Robinson, Brotherhood. Fantastic band. What you will notice on here, mine is actually signed by Neil Casale. I'm not going to say I knew Neil. I knew Neil from going to I went to like 58, I believe, CRB shows. And I had seen the Crows, Black Crows, 9 times. Actually, first time I ever saw somebody do cocaine. True story. First time I ever saw somebody do cocaine in my life was standing in line to get into the Tabernacle in Atlanta to see the Black Crows do a 2-night stand, and I about lost my mind. I think it was the second night, if I'm not mistaken. They played Pink Floyd's Fearless with Rich Robinson on vocals, and it was bam. I mean, my wife was there with me. That was back before we had kids, and phenomenal time. Not that the cocaine, maybe that guy had an absolute killer time because he was on cocaine. I don't know. But anyway, so I'm going to see the Crows quite a bit. One of the first bands I ever traveled around to see was Ryan Adams and the Cardinals. So Neil Casale was in Ryan Adams and the Cardinals at that iteration of Ryan Adams and the Cardinals when I was seeing them with my wife. Sorry to sniffle in the mic. And people, I'm going to be honest with you, man. I know he's dead, but people did not like Neil when he was in Ryan Adams and the Cardinals. I think Neil he had a rose. He would do that, rose. And they used to talk about him on Ryan Adams, the altcountry.org or ryanadams.org or whatever it used to be, the little message board. Anybody that was there at the time knows exactly what I'm talking about. They ended up shutting it down, but hey, it's Ryan. And he would hey, it's Ryan. And it would actually be Ryan Adams. He would come on and talk some. And I never chatted back with him. I didn't believe that it was actually him. But anyway, so people would rip Neil Casale. And I don't remember what city I was in. I mean, they all blur together now. And I had a conversation with Neil Casale multiple times, but at this one time, we were standing dead in front of the stage. It was some murky little sticky stage place. Everything was painted, flat black, looked like that chalkboard paint black. And I said, Neil, you have grown so much. I said, I used to really, really, really not care for your playing when you were with Ron Adams and the Cardinals. I was like, but now, like seeing you in CRB, and anybody that did get to see them live, Neil was like 60% of the band, man. I mean, his licks were so tasteful, and that Walker guitar was so beautiful. And he also played like a B bender or G bender or something when they were doing their little CRB birds kind of sound they were doing there at the end. And man, he was just so tasteful to listen to. I didn't care as much for Circles Around the Sun, but shout out to Adam McDougall, the keyboard player in CRB and Circles Around the Sun. They're carrying that torch on. I never got to see Cats, but I've heard cool things. I work with a girl who's in the jam band scene a little more than I am, and I get my information about the jam band scene from her. And she's gone to see Cats, I'm pretty sure, and people were really, really digging that. And I really hate that Neil passed away. I really do. As I'm sure other people are too. I made the statement one time, and this is probably the biggest compliment I could give Neil. Neil was in a place, he was so great in CRB at the moment that I personally felt like, it was just a matter of time before Neil's gone. He's too good. He's too good for this. Not that Chris isn't good, not that Adam isn't good, but he's one, Jimmy Herring death away from being in Widespread Panic, or he's, one, John Mayer getting caught with some hookers or something away from being in Dead and Company or whatever the next corporate iteration of that band is going to be. I can't say enough about him. So why am I talking about Neil Casale when I'm reviewing Greta Van Fleet's new record? Well, I did not care for Greta Van Fleet when I first heard them either. I'm like, man, this guy sounds like Robert Plant. I've seen Robert Plant. And his voice, I mean, that may be offensive to him to hear that, the lead singer. And I have purposefully not. I'm not a fanboy with these bands. I do want to get that out there. So with Greta Van Fleet, any of the bands that I ever just really dig into, it really is for me about the music, the art, the way it makes me feel, what these people are expressing, the ideas. To me, when you pick up an album, when you're, I'm going to grab Bob Marley here, when you're listening to this Bob Marley and the Wailers live, which I highly recommend as well. It was recorded on the mobile Rolling Stones unit, for anybody that didn't know that. It sounds fantastic. And when you're listening to this artifact of this man who's dead, who has put his just effort and exertion and energy and thought into these songs and into these albums, or in this case, this performance, and then you get to share that as many times as you want. I got these big, mighty Klipsch Cornwall 4s back here behind me. That's also in my credentials to anybody wondering, why should I listen to this guy about music? I called Upscale Audio. I think they're close to LA, and had saved up some money. And because I listened to so many records, I don't know what I don't necessarily care about the value of the records. I want to hear them, honestly. And so I talked to him. I said, I want 1973 sitting in my living room. And so I got my big Klipsch Cornwall 4s here. I sent a picture of these to my uncle, and he said, I have not seen speakers like that since the 1970s. Well, you're seeing them in 2021, and if you want to get you some, you can go get some. These are great. They sound fantastic. Anyway, so I got me a big Prima Luna Evo 300, and I got a Rega P6. And, and my cartridge here, Hana. It's a Hana. It's from Japan. So I have a mixed bag. These are made, I think, in Arkansas. The speakers are, and I'm not even going to try. The Rega is from Europe. Japan is from all over the place. And I think the guy that makes my Sutherland down here, I think he's out in Kansas City. Anyway, this record system absolutely slaps as far as I'm concerned, as far as my ears go. And, I don't necessarily care about how expensive it is, or I'm not the brands. I don't care about that. I want to put on Bob Marley, and I want to be able to close my eyes over here in my sweet spot on my couch, and I want to be able to hear Bob Marley as as good as I possibly can. I want that perfect picture. And anyway, Upscale Audio, I'm not plugging them. They're not sponsoring me by any means. Not that anybody's going to see this, but yeah, so fantastic. So getting back to Greta Van Fleet, I was not into Greta Van Fleet. They put out the song Age of the Machine. I was very aware of their other albums. I was very aware of their songs, Highway Tune, and they have the chops. But there was a little bit of emulation going on. I don't think anybody would deny that. I don't think anybody should deny that. There are tons and tons and tons of great bands who have emulated other things because that's just what sounded good to them. Hey, newsflash. Greta Van Fleet does Zeppelin maybe better than Zeppelin has since about, 1977 or so. I don't know. They are fantastic. They sound fantastic. Now, here's the problem with bands who sound like other bands. Rush ran into this. Bands who sound like other bands are always going to get compared to those other bands. Well, when you're getting compared to something like the mighty, quote, mighty Led Zeppelin, you're going up against Physical Graffiti. I'm saying that one on purpose, by the way. Physical Graffiti, Zeppelin 2, Houses of the Holy, 3, the first one. I mean, even Presence is disgusting. And, there are bands out there that will never make songs ever as good as some of the trash that's on Coda. I mean, it's a fact. So there are a lot of, Eric Clapton, has he not made a career out of basically emulating everyone else except for Derek and the Dominoes? John Mayer is probably getting more money than he's ever gotten in his life from the Dead and Company emulation that he's doing. But you learn. Those guys learn. Those guys have bills to pay. Those guys have careers. And they also have artistic ambition. And I think in the case of Greta Van Fleet, I was very curious to see where it went. I was very curious. There were a lot of guys that were going to see bands like Tedeschi Trucks, guys that were going to see Jason Isbell, Sturgill Simpson, like major, bigger rock type acts is what I'm trying to say. These people were going to see. So I think those type people were getting interested in Greta Van Fleet. So here's this guy, he's got the little vest on, man, and his little stomach going on, and they look cool, and they look cool in like a way that the Kings of Leon look cool. They're just a group of dudes who are not bad looking dudes and can play music really, really well. And I think that's what people were seeing with Greta Van Fleet. And then I would hear these people, yeah, man, I went to see Greta. And I remember kind of throwing up just a little bit because in a way I felt like as much as maybe the early iterations of songs for Greta can be, people could claim that they're a little contrived. They're made to sound like Zeppelin in a way. And, you could make that argument. I don't know whether that's true or not. And I don't think it matters, to be honest, because they did what they did really well. The chops were there. The licks were there. If a band came out tomorrow that sounded like AC/DC and it was just, and you had those same riffs, I think you would have to stop and just take notice and take a look. And I think that's what people were doing with Greta Van Fleet. People were like, what is this? And I think that you had some people there that wanted something that maybe they had experienced before with, maybe more baby boomer age people that were latching on because maybe they remember Zeppelin being big, or maybe they never got to see Zeppelin. Or I would even make the claim that the rock, now I'm not going to call these guys Southern rock, but the band I'm thinking of is Southern Rock, the Black Crowes. There's been this little hollowing out of bands, and you don't see bands like the Crowes touring anymore. I know they're about to do their little half-baked, half-cocked reunion tour on Shake Your Moneymaker, which honestly is a little disappointment. It's a little bit of a disappointment to me personally, but hey man, I get it. They want to play their tunes. They want to make money. That's their right to do that. I don't shame or aim to defame them in any way, but going back to Greta Van Fleet, the turning point for me was the Age of the Machine. And I'm going to make sure I'm saying that right. That was one of the singles they released. Let's see here. Yeah, Age of Machine. Said it twice. That way I say it right. Age of Machine. When I heard that song, it blew my mind. It absolutely blew my mind. And I thought, man, this is one of the best new songs that I've heard in quite a while. The way the song is framed, the movements throughout the song, it's just fantastic. And so I was highly anticipating this new record, and I was so excited the other day. I mean, I've listened to this song over and over and over, and just that airish space at the beginning, and that guitar, and then how he just comes in with his vocals, the details of that song. I just knew from all my experience of listening to records, I was like, they're on to something here. It's in the same way that if you hear some fantastic B-side or some fantastic song, maybe you go to that record and try to see if there's more in that well, and that's going back to what I'm saying. Like, there's this snapshot in time, think about this bucket. There's a snapshot in time where all these guys are in the studio, and like, what else did they get in there during that moment? And that's a really good way to find a lot of great songs. If someone ever recommends a song, I have a buddy of mine that I'll send him text with, "Hey man, check out this Free song," or "Check out this ZZ Top song I found," or this Red Hot Chili Peppers song. And then one of the things that he's told me he does, because he knows his taste is different than mine, is he starts, listening through on Spotify at the other songs, and he'll find other songs that he likes. So anyway, I knew from the sound of that song that this record had the potential of being fantastic, something different. Something different in the way of the the Black Keys Rubber Factory, or the Strokes Is This It? That has this potential to be this upper echelon ground shaking thing. And so my wife, who owns the record store, online record store, I was opening up, I was helping her the other afternoon, and I opened the box, and boom, her order of this record. And I gasped. I was like, are you serious? And I get excited about records, but a lot of times now, because I have so much that I'm digging into and so much that I'm listening to on a regular basis, I may even miss release dates. And I know, Sturgill Simpson's Cutting Grass or something comes out, Cutting Grass 2, and I know I want to listen to that, but it's just there are other things in the way. As soon as I had this record in my hand, I wanted to plan a time. I didn't want to go in and just sit and listen to it, right then with my kids or whatever else was going on that night. I wanted to dedicate a moment to sitting down, opening up this record, and looking at the art and feeling it, and listening to this record. And so as soon as it got here, I planned that time, and that time was this past Saturday, which was yesterday. And I sat down and listened to it all the way through. And I gave it what I was calling in my head. So I kept notes, which I'm going to go through here. But I said, this is, in my head, I was like, this is a 1970s listen through. I don't know their names. I know the three are brothers, and there's the other guy. I know all that. I don't know their names. I'm not a fanboy. I didn't want to know any of that. I knew they were from Michigan somewhere, and I didn't want to read anything. I wanted to put the record on. I wanted to let it be what it was, and I wanted to just hear it the way they wanted me to hear it, side by side. And so I went side A, and I'm going to go through this, but it was absolutely ridiculous. And then side B came, and it was absolutely ridiculous. And I took a break. I took a little 5-10 minute break and just kind of, let the first album, the first LP wash over me. And the reason I'm describing this full experience is I don't think people always get this type of insight into a record when they're just listening to it on Spotify. So when you listen to it on Spotify and you listen to the 12 songs or whatever it is, you listen through it all the way through. But when you're listening to it on a turntable, it's completely different. And the reason that it matters is in the 60s and 70s, they would have to make conscious decisions on how many songs were going to be on each side, what the order was, how it was going to fit, and all of that matters because of time. So there's only so much time that fits on each side of each record. So the reason I'm saying this is I think that their attention to the order of the songs is either the most coincidental perfect accident ever, or they really thought this out. And that was one of the first things that I noticed. Within the first side of this album, I knew I could almost tell what they were hinting at. I could tell what they were hinting was coming. I knew that there was going to be this just big, just boom at the end, and that they were really going to lay it out. And another thing that I really noticed throughout this entire record, and then I'm going to get into each, I'm going to go song by song until it falls off the rails here on my notes. But one thing that I noticed is the space and the time they give each other as artists to play their instruments, to have their moment. It comes in on the keyboards and the organ, and it's the space for the vocals, and then he takes his break and just lets them take flight and find interesting spaces. And the first song, Heat Above, the lyrics read, "Can you feel my love?" I instantly feel their love for the music that they're expressing. I called a buddy of mine immediately after listening to it, and we played phone tag a little bit. But once I got a hold of him, I said, I don't know if they're consuming all of the same. There's no way they could just because of time. But what they've heard, whether it be, Zeppelin, Mountain, whatever rock that they are hearing, it's going through these guys like a filter. And what they're putting out, I feel like, is a just remarkable expression of that type of rock. And I hate the term classic rock, but I'm going to have to use it just for context. So when I'm saying classic rock, I'm literally talking about, the Beatles era, early Stones era, Beach Boys era, not the doo-wop. So let's say about 1965 to about 1979 is where I feel like is a good safe space. There's some good stuff after that, leading up into the middle 90s, and then it gets very Creed, Nickelback, all that for a while. And then I feel like the Strokes, I will make that claim, not the White Stripes. People stop saying that. Stop saying that the White Stripes killed off Creed, Nickelback, Default, Stained, all that. It was not them. I don't care. I was there. I remember the summer of the bands, the Hives, the Vines, the Strokes. I can specifically remember the videos coming on of the Strokes, and just, man, they looked cool. And I can prove it in 2 seconds. How many people dress like the White Stripes running around now? I'm not talking about the hipster Jack White, Nashville Jack White, White Stripes look with all the leather and everything else. I mean the like spandex pants that are like half red. It was dude, whatever. all the respect to Jack White that I can possibly give him, but the Strokes killed it, as if a arrow from Nirvana's quiver, pow, just burst all of that, Creed, Nickelback, Default. They were not big, but I remember them. Stained. That sound, they really shot that down and took it back to, that more analog, respected, classic rock, R&B sound. And another huge moment, I think, for that was also the Black Keys. Now, it took the Black Keys a little bit to ramp up, and I'm mentioning them I like the Black Keys a lot. I do. But, there are other bands that I respect more, I like more, but I really respect Dan Auerbach. I really respect the sounds that he's able to command on all the records that he's a part of. And I think that they are, like Greta Van Fleet, are this beacon, this calling back to this old sound, this rich rock and roll, analog, taking your guitar, plugging it into a Marshall amp or whatever, and just letting it rip and expressing yourself. All this music that has come out of America, whether it be the blues or country or rock and roll, it's very much us. It's very much this human expression of freedom, this human expression of what your values are, and I don't care what somebody else thinks, and I'm just going to serve it up to you. Now, whether that's a nice little 10 Fogelberg or bread or whatever it is, or if it's Black Sabbath, Motorhead, that kind of stuff. So I just love when I hear bands that are getting a rich, true expression. They're not trying to sound like Drake. They're not trying to sound like the Carpenters. They're not trying to sound like Boston, ZZ Top. So I came up with this theory the other day. I'm going to put it on here so I can get it out of my head. When I was listening through the ZZ Top, they're ridiculous, man, up till, I'm going to say the record wrong. DeGuello. Is that it? The red one. Yeah, DEGU with the 2 dots, ELLO. DeGuello is how I'm going to say that. That record is nuts. They're trying some new stuff. That they're trying to break out of the blues rock a little bit and do some experimentation. And that record is disgusting. The next one, El Loco, not so much, man. Not so much. And then they had enough ideas. My theory is they had enough of these blues ideas left in their head to make things like Legs and what's the other song? Give Me All Your Lovin' from Eliminator. They had enough blues ideas that they could put on this new like 80s sound that would make them feel like they could make a Boston record. So I don't know if Bill Ham, their producer, their manager, I don't know if he was super into Boston. It seems like that to me. So when I'm looking at the cover of Eliminator, Recycler, Afterburner for sure, I think they wanted that like really cleaned up production that Boston had, maybe with like some 80s keyboards. And it worked once. And then they tried it 2 more times. You can even look at the covers, man. It's like cookie cutter as it gets. And I think those 3 albums, in my opinion, have kind of overshadowed and made their earlier albums a little bit lost. So when you're listening to, Jesus Just Left Chicago or Just Got Paid or Tush, as good as those hits sound, there's a lot of meat in those records as well. And the reason I'm saying that, one of the things that I said in my notes here is that this album is not like this album, Get a Grip. So I do love Aerosmith. Not trying to trash on Aerosmith at all, but Aerosmith made Get a Grip, and there's about 4 or 5 hits or singles that were, the radio played hits. And those are good. They're really, really good. But cohesiveness of this album, not so much. Not so much. But you do get that with this Greta Van Fleet record. So let me get into the songs here. So I had Heat Above. Can You Feel My Love? Yes, I do. I did feel their love. I felt the love of how much they love their instruments, that space that I talked about earlier that they give each other. And again, this has been one of my most anticipated albums for months. And, I've wondered how much art has this virus kept from us. I don't know if this album was delayed. I feel like maybe it was. I feel like it was supposed to come out a while back, but it got delayed. And if it did, man, sorry guys, that happened to you. That stinks. And I know that there's probably a lot of bands that have, I hope there's a lot of bands that have one in the chamber ready to go and they can tour on that album. I know there's several bands that I do respect quite a bit for going ahead and putting their material out, even though they can't tour. There's a few that have done that. But hey, man, the virus sucks. I think it's stolen a lot from us. But next Friday, you're going to get a piece that has been sitting around during COVID. So, My Way Soon. Oh, the riff. I had this record up so loud. I had the lyric book and a few records that I had listened to before. I had them stacked up. And I had this so loud that my lyric book it just fell off. And I was like, I'm going to go get that. And I brought it over and I just kind of followed along a little bit. But I had said that I did like a 1970s listen through. So I didn't look at their faces. I didn't look at any of that. I just listened all the way through. And, man, I'm impressed by what they don't play. I think that's one of just those recycled riffs that people like the White Stripes would do, or maybe you hear some little like recycled kind of sound in like the polished up pop country that just gets repeated These guys don't do that. They don't play like the pentatonic licks that you think they're gonna play. I mean, there's experimentation. There's definitely been some thought, and just they've put a lot of time, I feel like, into these parts, and they feel like these epic flows. And you know, I'm really drawn to that type music with Hawkwind or Pink Floyd, King Crimson. These bands that just have like an epic piece. Rush did it too. I love that. And you know why I love that? Is because only lazy people, only lazy people don't find those, right? Like the guys who want to sit there and listen to album rock, the people who actually care, the people who are going to still listen to the Black Keys' Let's Rock, and just because it didn't win 50 Grammys, they're still going to realize, hey man, that record sounded fantastic. It sounds good. It feels good. I don't care how many records it sold. I don't care that this ZZ Top Diguello is not Eliminator and it didn't go 10 times platinum. It's the best thing they ever did. And I'll say that. It's the same reason why people listen to Led Zeppelin and finally find something like Physical Graffiti and go, man, this is it here. Like, this is like Pink Floyd Animals is a good example. That's not one of their commercially most successful albums. I'm sure they did fine off of it. But in my opinion, something like Animals or Metal is really the like the balls. That is where they did what they did best, I think. So anyway, this is only Greta Van Fleet's second record. I did end up liking the first full length. I am a fan of their other music now, and it just is what it is. I think this is definitely the right step in the right direction for sure. They have put the time in. In my opinion, they have looked at, okay, these are our skills. Okay. And we love Zeppelin. We love these other things. What do we want to do, man? And then I think they got a whole big bowl of pot and had some time on their hands and just tore it up, man. I mean, they aren't emulating Zeppelin anymore. I don't hear it on this record. You could say, oh, his voice still... No, man. I think he's found his spot. I think the guitar player is out of his mind. He's talented. The drummer is insane, and the bass player, the keyboard guy, they're all tasteful, man. They're all very, very, very tasteful in what they're doing on this record. And, they're interpreting it in their own way. That filter I was talking about, where they have let this music wash over them. They have these talents and they have this opportunity, and it's a home run. It's a home run. And again, I am not a fanboy. This is a band I wanted to hate, the same as I wanted to hate Tame Impala. I used to hate Tame Impala. I'm looking at the camera now. Hated Tame Impala. But then you give people a chance, you listen to it, and oh man, Tame Impala is insane. I'll be the first to say when I'm wrong. Anyway, I'm going to move on to Broken Bells, which is better in like the first four notes than the band, or if you want to call it a band, the group that was also named Broken Bells. Man, there's just such a low power to this, and when this song kicked in, I felt like it was one of the first times I just really felt the drums. I really felt the drums coming in, and that's what I'm saying. Like there's like space to it. You get the keyboards at the beginning, and then his voice, and then you get some guitar, and then the guitar is in the back, and it's just keeping it together, and then you get some bass, some more keyboards, some more vocals, and it's just, there's this sharing of the floor. He's not screaming his head off the whole time. The guitar's not just riffing out the entire time, even though every single one of those dudes could. If one of these guys has an ego, if the guitar player all of a sudden has an ego, I want more riffs, man. It doesn't work. They seem like, and I don't know if is that the brother thing? I don't know. That they've already had to deal with everybody's crap. They know, hey man, I know you, dude. I know what you do, brother. Maybe that works. Maybe that's the formula. I love it. I absolutely love it. So man, it's just cool how they introduce the instruments and they all get their moment. And this was the second time I have my notes here. That was the second time I got just chill bumps, where everything's just harmonizing perfectly, and it's just cohesive. And then maybe something happens that was unexpected, and man, I just boom, just chill bumps everywhere. And then the solo is just so tasteful. And I didn't know that they had I'd been listening to to the singles that they were putting out on Spotify. I was checking them out. The only one that I was super familiar with was Age of Machine. But then they had put out Broken Bells, but I did not know that. I didn't look at the song titles as it was going. I just listened. I just flipped over. The song titles aren't on the actual centers of the LPs themselves. So I didn't, as I was flipping, I never saw the titles. I didn't look at the back of the record, but it was really cool. And I, as I was sitting there listening to this, I said, man, in my head, talking to myself, which I'm doing right now too. I said, if they put Broken Bells right now on classic rock radio, so Nashville 105.9 The Rock, if they put Broken Bells on there right now, man, there would be plumbing trucks and heating and air trucks crashing all over. The True Green would be in the ditch. People trying to call in and figure out what this is. It sounds like, and this is what I love about it, it's very fresh and feels like it's from 2020, 2021, or I'm assuming they recorded this 2019, 2020, but I don't know. I didn't look up any of that. I didn't want to know anything. And they, that sound is very present and very, today, but it's also, this could have come out in 1977, 1975, easy, and you would believe it. If somebody said, hey man, check this record out. I found this record from 1975 that you don't know. Check it out. Easy. It would pass. It would pass that test. I think the Black Keys have some of that. Maybe even the Black Angels, I would argue, have a 1969, 67 kind of sound that could pass. This is one of those, man. It is good. Call me a liar. Comment. I don't care. So plumbing trucks crashed. I had on here Dead Out of 1976. This was my favorite track. It was definitely my favorite track. I went to the gym on Saturday, and I had listened to this album at that point. I had 3 listens. I listened through all by myself as loud as I could stand it, and my ears were ringing, and it was just soaring in here in my living room. And the second listen, I was reading the lyrics and gave it just another listen. And then I had a family listen. Everybody just came in, and I listened again. And it really hit every time. It hit reading the lyrics, which I felt were deep but simplistic enough. I felt like somebody out there is going to rip them for their lyrics, I think, on this record. Say they're too simplistic or repetitive or whatever. And I could see how a person would argue that. But I would argue that if you go back to Roger Waters' formula and his advice to David Gilmour, when David Gilmour was struggling to write songs, they don't have to be complex. You can use smaller words. You can use common things. It's almost like, it's the same idea with pop art. So you got Jasper Johns, and he uses the American flag, or he uses, the Targets, or Andy Warhol with Velvet Underground's album. Art itself does not have to be complex just to prove that there's worth, right? So like if you're listening to Dream Theater, it's insanely complex, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the soul is there. It means that there's talent there, but it doesn't mean that the soul's there. So, anyway, I'll move on. Next song, Built by Nations. This has a big 1977 Zepp sound, and I think I said earlier, and I hope I didn't contradict myself, but I said I don't feel like they're emulating Zeppelin anymore. I don't feel like they're really calling back to that, even though that's, I think it's going to be obvious, but it's going to be obvious for a while. What I mean is that they do have that sound. They sound like, or could be accused of sounding like, Zeppelin or Rush, but they're definitely doing it in their own way. This does have that just big, festival Zeppelin sound. I really dug it. Just loads of air moving. I remember I had all the ZZ Top's records up here on my wall where I'd done that listen, and my speakers are going that way, but the air being sucked into the back of these corn walls, it was sucking the poly sleeves that I had on my records. I could see them up there kind of flapping, and I was like, man, this song is moving some air, and I could I could feel my foundation here moving a little bit too on the bass, but big thunderous sound on that. And then I stopped I stopped knowing the titles after that, so I just had song 5. Oh, this is Age of Machine. It is Age of Machine. This was one of my favorite songs. Super good. Man, the song is so good. And like that Get a Grip album. This is, by this point I'm going, every song on here is going to be good. Every song is going to be good. I don't know what else to say. I don't think there's going to be throwaways because I haven't seen a hint yet of, I don't really like what they do. That's the thing with like Jack White's records. I keep going to him, but I listen to some of his records. I'm like, it's a pretty cool solo. And then he'll just lose his mind off somewhere where I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know what you're doing there. You're losing me. So there's enough experimentation with this record to satisfy my taste of wanting to hear something fresh, wanting to hear something new. But I think there's also, it's grounded. It's grounded in the sound. It's grounded in this progressive rock sound, I feel like, but in their own way. And it's fantastic. And people, as I was sitting there listening to this record, I was like, I don't know how many people would be able anymore to just sit down and listen to a full-length record. I tell you who doesn't care, Greta Van Fleet, because this record, it has some length to it. It's not a 30-minute record. I think they could have taken side 1 and side 2, released that as one album, and it would still, in my opinion, be up there for Album of the Year. It's incredible. But then there's more. There's side C and D. And they don't care that people today have an attention span of about 20 seconds. I feel like all the songs have a really good length to them. I feel like they let it ride if they're liking the beat that they're on, or the little guitar solo or the keys, that they let it hang out for a minute, and I really dig that. And I think bands need to get that opportunity and get that space to make longer songs, which they're doing here. I got my goblet. This was like the most Greta Van Fleet cup that I have. So it's tiny, so I have 2 of them. But goblet. So anyway. People sitting down and listening. So I talk a lot on my podcast about, attention and Facebook and social media and the media itself. And that's something that, I'm reading a lot of books right now on that. And I'm reading a lot of articles and listening to Matt Taibbi articles, just kind of getting my head straight on what I think about social media and this drive for my attention. So with everybody stealing my attention, the one thing I wanted to give my attention to was this record, sit down and listen to it. And I was thinking, man, a lot of people can't do this, but they're never going to have the experience that I had with this record. And that's what made me want to sit down and tell this little story that here, this is this very, it's a very big moment in my life when I can look forward to a record or a movie. And, that's not always the case, that there's something that you can look forward to. With COVID, there's nothing coming out, or maybe your band's, broken up, and they don't put out records anymore, or everything that's coming out is just kind of lame, man. I don't really dig it. I mean, there's tons of times where the music just kind of gets to where it sucks, or either you're out of touch with what's going on, or they're out of touch with what everyone wants to hear. I don't know which is true, but anyway, this one, I cannot stress this enough, how much I was looking forward to it. And so I want to talk about that too. Just this experience of wanting to see something. It could be a movie, it could be a record, it could be a whatever, but then giving that thing time and sitting down and listening to an entire record, not playing on my phone. I left my phone in another room. I didn't touch a phone. I had my laptop in my lap, just taking notes. If I had something crazy that popped in my head, I just wanted to take a note so I could go back later and just kind of vet out that thought. But yeah, man, it was great to just sit down and listen to a record. And I had planned the time, and I listened to the entire thing. And I'm so glad that I did, because I see the big picture of it. I see the epicness of all the songs, how they flow together and how it starts and ends. And how there's a little tease of what's to come, or how the songs maybe even interplay in like a Tool kind of way, where People rip on Tool all the time. Oh, they recycle ideas. No, man, they're their ideas that they can do what they want. I mean, just because Andy Warhol painted with red one time, does that mean he can't put red in the next painting too? That's so stupid. But these songs, there's definitely not a song that just sticks out as like a weird. The first thing that pops in my head is there's this Tommy James and the Shondells album I like called Traveling. There's a couple songs on there there's a couple songs that are pretty crazy, and that's a killer record. But then there's like one that you just know the record company's like, all right, man, we'll let you smoke all this dope, and you can make that record, and you can do whatever you want on it. But we want you to record this one song, and we're going to put it out as a single. And it's so cheesy, and it doesn't fit. There's none of that on this record, none of that at all. So my advice to anyone who's listening at this point too, man, is always remember that your anus and your mouth are both similar things, and you probably should keep both of them shut most of the time. Just listen to some music, man. I'm going to put that on there. I'm saying that. I think people, even though I'm sitting here running my mouth to no one, I think sometimes, man, we really do just need to be still and just listen. Whether that be to other people, whether that be to music, which is obviously somebody else's expression. But that was one of the things that just popped in my head too, man. Is like, I just really enjoy letting someone else's art wash over me, or someone else's opinions, wash over me from time to time. The space they used for the compositions it's so impressive. It really is. Song 6, I start to feel like there's a lament going on. I did confirm this later. I read through the lyrics and felt like I started to understand what they were getting at. There's definitely, even in the title, there's a, kind of an anti-war sentiment, almost like a lament. It's not like in a, in a protest kind of way, like war is bad and it's not like that at all. It's very humanistic. I felt like it was very, naturistic, humanistic, just like, there's one of the lines that kind of, says that, maybe this opinion is for protecting the people that have to go to war and fight. And it's really funny, man, that how for me, there's multiple things going on at the same time. So I listened to Marcus Luttrell, the lone survivor, Navy SEAL. I listened to his podcast with Joe Rogan that he had, a week or so ago. And then now I'm listening to his book, The Lone Survivor. And I've seen the movie, all that, but I've had a buddy that's been telling me, man, you need to listen to it. And so, I've been listening to the part about him being in BUD/S and in basic training and all that. And, there really are people, because of their circumstance, or maybe they're born into a family that way. Like, some people's paths are already chosen for them. Some people feel very, very strong about going to the military and all that. And I do think there's kind of an, like an anti-war piece, or a, maybe just wanting peace in general. Like, if we can avoid war, I don't think anybody would disagree with that. But then you have the people that are out there, the people that are the tip of the spear, the people that are training in case somebody wants to come get some. And that's another piece that people forget, man. With the ability to sit here and me just sit in my living room and record my opinion on someone else's art, and I get to do that, and no one can tell me I can't do that. I mean, that is the beauty of this country, and we need to continue to get our opinions out there, and we need to continue to, to talk about what we want to talk about. And so these guys are doing that, man. They're sitting there telling you their opinions on I feel like, on conflict and on war, and, not in some sort of Dylan poetic way where it's just, come you masters of war, and like really pointing to specifics, but more like in a generic humanistic generalization of these ideas. I really dug it, man. I really did dug the lyrics, and I started to feel this lament for war and for conflict. If I had anything negative to say about this album at this point, so this is before side 2. If I had anything negative to say, it's just the pressing was not the greatest on the actual vinyl itself. So the vinyl I have is just the standard black. I do have one indie exclusive white coming, but yeah, and I saw there's a tie-dyed version as well. And I'm not going to show any of the art, man. I want to be absolutely respectful to these guys, and I don't want to show anything I'm not supposed to show. Everyone knows what the cover looks like, so I'm going to stay there. The inside cover, I'm not. You go discover that yourself. It's awesome. I feel like it fits the album perfectly. I really like so the cover feels like the cover of Pearl Jam Vitology, where it's textured, and I dig that as well. Very cool, very cool. So the production, man, is spot on. I'm not gonna keep going through these. I'm not gonna keep going through these notes. I'm gonna put this down. But yeah, man, side 2, it kind of slows down a little bit, and you get these little, epic transitional space. And one thing that I've always enjoyed is like the Pink Floyd Echoes kind of sound, or Journey, where you got this 20 plus minute song, full side of the album. And if anybody wonders why I keep looking this way as opposed to the camera, number one, I don't want to look at the camera because it's just black. And number two, I have my windows open and it's beautiful outside. So it's beautiful outside. I got Greta Van Fleet. I got my mic. Anyway, yeah, so there's this space, and then they just bring it back, man. And I knew when I put on side D, and this is what I'm saying. People don't get this when they're not listening to records, so I got to explain it for ya. So what happened, I turned to side D, and this is where my experience with podcasting comes in. I know that most people are probably not listening at this point right here. They're gone. They clicked on it. They're back to their Facebook or whatever else they're doing, Instagram, TikTok. They're not watching. So this album's pretty long, and they get the good epic songs in at the beginning. Side A and B is just and that's another cool thing about this record too, man. I forgot to say. So I had one song that was my favorite, Age of Machine. But then listening to it the first time, I was like, oh man, that Broken Bells song is, and I didn't even know, I just knew it was number 3 or whatever it is. And it was my favorite. I was like, man, this is, and I knew, okay, this album is going to be worth multiple listens, if not just like an absolute full mastery of the record, and there's going to be more songs that are going to be my favorite at different times, and it's probably going to change multiple times, and I'm trying to think of a record that did me that way. There's only 5 songs, but Pink Floyd Animals, between sheep and pigs and dogs, my favorite changes probably every time I listen to that record. And the same with Wish You Were Here. So Shine On You Crazy Diamond, the first half is insane, and then the second half is insane. And it's just, there's a lot of bands that do that way. Zeppelin, Physical Graffiti. Probably every time I listen to Physical Graffiti, completely different song is my favorite. It might be a Wonton song one time, and then a completely different one the next time. But yeah, these guys did it. There are plenty of songs here for you. It's multiple listen friendly, and there's going to be, if you're into that. Hey, if you're not into music, you're probably already gone anyway. But if you're really into music and you're still listening, I'm telling you, this album is definitely worth the listen. But going back to side D, so what I know from podcasts is at this point, nobody's listening anymore. So they probably know that too. They've gotten all this epic music, and they're like, I don't know, man. People are really going to make it to side D. They let it hang out on side D. I knew it was coming. Either way, either it was cool to me because it's like, oh, they kind of got people in the the little slow epics that still have. Dude, when I say slow epics too, let me clear this up. Looking at the camera, let me clear this up. Anytime that there's some space or a journey to a song, they reward you at the end on this album. And I love when bands do that. And that's what I was saying about Echoes. I love how you have to go through the forest. You're dealing with this. Is this music? Is this noise? I like it, but I don't, I could be listening to Stevie Nicks or something. And then, here comes that, with Echoes. And it's ridiculous. And they reward you. And I feel like these songs are that way, very much that way, where you feel like, okay, I put the time in here and I made it, and here are these great pieces at the end. And then that is also a representation of the way this whole album goes. It's fantastic, man. And so, let me talk about a couple records I got sitting over here, and then these were supposed to remind me of some ideas. I'm going to show some records off here. So this is my original press, Black Crowes, signed by Chris and Rich. I got them back together before they got back together, by the way. Not in real life, but just on this record. And this is the one that does not have, God, I'm going to forget his name, the producer, the one that did Wildflowers. You can look that up. You know what I'm talking about. I will know when I'm watching this back. But he did not want his name on this record until it sold, I don't know, it was like 1 million copies or something. Man, I've forgotten more about music than I can remember. I know generalities of the stories. The guy who produced this record, his name is not on the cover here. But it was after that, after it became successful. But anyway, what I wanted to say about the Black Crowes are doing their little tour. And, you know, when you have bands that are that talented, that were creating that great of music, that are just no longer there, there's a vacuum, there's a void. And I'm glad that a record company has stepped up and taken a chance on a band like Greta Van Fleet. I think they got a pretty decent contract, and obviously a lot of promotion and a lot of opportunity. And I think they've been given a chance to grow. And anybody who manages this band, just get these guys a good, clean supply of time and weed, and, you know, keep getting them their little, New York Anthropology clothes or whatever that is. I don't know what that is. I'm so lost with, I don't dress bohemian, but yeah, that's cool, man. I dig it. I really dig what they're doing. And another recommendation that goes along with this is this Neil Young Rust Bucket. So why am I showing you Neil Young way down in the Rust Bucket? So that live record is ridiculous. It's insane. And one thing that I noticed with that album, number one, it's 3 sets long. So is my last podcast. It was 3 sets long, and it's a live show in Santa Cruz, and they absolutely rip. And the songs are not 2 minutes. They're all 7, 8, 9 minutes, and they just ride the groove. They're just feeling the music, and they're just riding the groove. And it's nuts. That is these two, the newest, the battle at Gardens Gate. I don't know why I can't remember all that. The Battle at Gardens Gate. That and Way Down in the Rust Bucket are the two that I'm absolutely spinning like crazy right now. And I just love, man, I love rock and roll. I love to hear new things coming, or older sounds coming back as new things. And yeah, man, I'm pumped for people to hear it. I talked about my ZZ Top listen through. That was absolutely worth it too, man. Just being able to go through, hear all these other songs. It's such a shame that we as millennials who didn't grow up in the 70s, it's like we've had to hear a lot of classic rock, just, one hit at a time. And there's so much more. Like, I'm sitting here looking across the wall and I see, Thin Lizzy Jailbreak is just absolutely disgusting. It's stuff where there's like maybe one song that they play on the radio, but then, Emerald. Like, how are you playing The Boys Are Back in Town on the Rocket 1059, Nashville, Tennessee, 1-on-1? Why are you not playing Emerald, dude? Oh my goodness. We'll play Kansas, Carry On Our Wayward Son 5 times a day, but they don't play Thin Lizzy Emerald. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. Greta Van Fleet. Their new record comes out 16th. Fantastic. I didn't really even review the second side that well. It is very, very good. Go check it out. Hey, man, if this video blows up, which it probably won't, but if it does, I will mail these copies out to people. I'll give these away. All right. Share this with your friends. This has been fun. Me talking to Greta Van Fleet, sorta. And this has been Rocket Man's podcast, Rocket Man's Wheelhouse, episode 4. Peace.